When I was younger, marriage was never something I dreamed of. It wasn't fear or rebellion, it simply didn't appeal to me. I liked my space, my freedom, and the quiet that came with being on my own. I saw marriage as something people did because society expected it, not because it made them happier. My parents had a good marriage. They truly loved each other, and most of my relatives did too. But even seeing that never made me want it for myself. I was fine with the idea of living alone, maybe having children someday, but without the weight of a lifetime contract. But this world doesn't let you stay single quietly. Once you hit a certain age, everyone becomes an expert on your future. Every phone call ends with the same question, when are you settling down? And when you don't have an answer, they find one for you. That's how I met Laura. She was full of energy, confident, the kind of woman who walked into a room and seemed to know exactly where she belonged. We dated for 7 months. It was easy, light, without promises or plans. Then she got pregnant. The moment my parents found out, the conversation ended before it began. "You're a man now," my father said. "You'll do the right thing." And just like that, I got married. Not out of passion or conviction, but out of obligation. We didn't have a big ceremony, just a quiet signing at the registry, a few pictures, and a small meal with family. I remember standing next to her, smiling for photographs, feeling like I was watching someone else's life begin. At first, it wasn't bad. We were learning each other, trying to find rhythm in routine. Laura was caring, quick-witted, and thoughtful. She had opinions about everything, which I used to find charming. But after our daughter was born, the charm wore thin. Laura became different. Or maybe I just started to see her clearly. She was controlling in ways I hadn't noticed before. Everything had to be her way, how the house was arranged, how meals were cooked, even how I folded my clothes. Nothing I did was ever quite right. If I left a pot uncovered, she'd sigh like it was a personal insult. If I didn't put my shoes in the right place, she'd snap, "How many times have I told you?" It sounds small when I say it, but when every day feels like an exam, you start to lose a piece of yourself. One evening, after another argument about something trivial, I called my father. I told him I was tired, that I felt like I was living with a teacher, not a wife. He laughed and said, "All women nag, son. Find something that makes you happy outside the house." It was good advice. But I wish he'd told me that some escapes can destroy you quietly. Before marriage, I drank occasionally, weddings, parties, Friday nights with friends. It was social. Controlled. But when the house began to feel like a place I didn't want to return to, I started stopping by the bar after work. At first, it was 1 bottle. Then 2. Then 3. I told myself I was just avoiding traffic. That I needed to unwind before heading home. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't want to go back to another night of tension. Alcohol became my silence. It dulled the noise, blurred the sharpness of her words, made everything softer. I was never drunk, not visibly. But I was disappearing. The bartender learned my name, my preferred seat, my drink of choice. The lights in the bar became warmer than the ones at home. And for a while, that felt like peace. I didn't talk about how I felt. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just drank, came home, showered, and went straight to bed. It became a routine, one that made me calm on the outside and hollow on the inside. If there's one sentence I've repeated too many times, it's, "Stop talking to me like I'm your child." Laura has a way of speaking that strips you of dignity. Sharp. Cold. Final. 2 weeks ago, I came home exhausted. I dropped my shoes by the couch and went to bed. Minutes later, I heard her screaming my name like there was an emergency. I rushed out, only for her to point at the shoes and say, "Come and carry your shoes." It wasn't about the shoes. It was the tone. The disrespect. The constant reminder that I was always wrong, always less. When she's away visiting her family, the house feels peaceful. The silence feels natural again. I can breathe. But the moment she's back, everything feels tense, like walking on cracked glass. If I ever correct her tone, she sulks, retreats into silence, and acts like I'm the problem. Sometimes, I mirror her just to let her see how it feels. But that never helps. At some point, love gets replaced with exhaustion. You stop wanting to be understood and start wanting to be left alone. Marriage has taught me patience, but not the kind people talk about at weddings. It's not peaceful or noble. It's survival. I've learned when to speak and when silence is safer. Sometimes, I just let her finish talking and quietly do what she wants. Other times, I grab my keys, drive aimlessly until I calm down, and return home pretending everything's fine. People say marriage is compromise. I think they're wrong. It's endurance. It's learning to swallow the words that would start another fight. Sometimes, you don't compromise, you just shrink. You fold yourself small enough to fit into someone else's expectations. And when you do it long enough, you forget what size you used to be. I've become quieter, calmer, more cautious. The world calls that maturity. But to me, it feels like surrender. If I could talk to my younger self, I'd say one thing. Don't get married out of pressure. Don't confuse obligation for love. Love is never enough. It fades, it bends, it gets buried under bills, exhaustion, and resentment. What keeps a marriage going isn't romance, it's guilt, patience, and the weight of promises made in front of people who no longer live with the consequences. I still love Laura, in a strange, complicated way. But that love doesn't feel alive anymore. It's duty now. Commitment. Habit. Some nights, I imagine another version of my life. A life where I stayed single. A life where I could come home to silence. A life where I didn't have to drink to breathe. Then I think about my daughter. Her laugh. Her little hands holding mine. And I know that for her, I'll keep showing up, even if it means losing pieces of myself. Because some stories don't end in freedom. They just continue, quietly, out of love, or guilt, or both. Marriage taught me things I never asked to learn. It taught me that peace can feel like pretending. That silence can be louder than anger. That you can love someone deeply and still feel lonely beside them. I still drink sometimes, not to forget, but to take the edge off the noise inside my head. It's not pride. It's just survival. Maybe one day I'll stop. Maybe one day I'll remember what happiness used to feel like. But until then, I'll keep going. For my child. For the man I promised to be. For the hope that one day, love won't feel like endurance.